Hello, everybody. It's great to be practicing with you. It is evening is heading in here in Israel, and it's well, God, distracting windows popped up. Good, so nice to see some familiar faces, to be back here with you. It's just so inspiring, this community from around the world that gathers to pause in the middle of the day for some contemplative practice. So Mark mentioned that we are on today, the day we have already counted is day 41. We are getting close to standing at the foot of the mountain to have that felt sense of receiving Torah. And so the question that we're going to take for our sit today is, what does that mean? How does that even happen? And when we begin to really get into the nitty-gritty of what does revelation, what does a felt sense of revelation actually mean in Jewish tradition, we find that, the mountain gets turned on its head, so to speak. And so I want to start with a text that I'm just going to read, and then we're going to take the inspiration for our practice today, this day in the counting of the Omer cycle. In the Omer cycle, today is Yesod of Yesod. This is a spicy one, but I want to offer it to us as the key that unlocks this question of what does that mean to have to have that felt sense of the experience of myself receiving Torah. So when the Torah begins to engage with the question of what is Torah, it starts by sort of shattering our expectations of what Torah might be and where it might come from. So I'm going to read from Parashat Nitzavim, the book of Deuteronomy, a full parsha of poetry. But so Nitzavim endeavors to answer this question. Surely this Torah that I give you today, it is not too baffling for you, nor is it beyond reach. It is not in the heavens that you should say, who among us can go up to the heavens and get it for us and impart it to us, that we may observe it? Neither is it beyond the sea that you should say, who among us can cross to the other side of the sea and get it for us to impart it to us, that we might observe it? No, the thing is very close to you. It is in your mouth and in your heart to observe it. So if we thought that Torah was something very far away and inaccessible, Parashat Nitzavim is saying to us, no, it is within you. And so that is the frame that I want to give. We're going to begin to drop now into practice. And so you'll hear I'll give our intention for our sit as I begin to talk you in. So you can already right now just take a position that you take when you do this midday meditation. So I hope that you're joining in a place that you can practice. I want you to take a comfortable seated position. Take a moment right now and scooch your bum back so that if there is a back to the chair, you're resting against it such that the back can do what it was designed to do to support you to sit up nice and tall. And just begin to feel yourself here in this moment and in your body. So Yesod of Yesod. I love this spiritual interaction. First of all, Yesod on a technical level is the divine phallus, which is to say that if you thought you were part of a Prudist tradition, think again. There's something very alive and very real about this interaction. But on a deep level, on a spiritual level, Yesod of Yesod is trying to get into the dynamics of how does this world work? What does it mean to be a soul walking around in this spacesuit that we call a body? And for our question, because we are walking towards Sinai, what does it mean to encounter God, to have revelation, to receive Torah myself? So Yesod of Yesod is trying to answer that question. And the kavanah that I just offered us from Nitzavim, it begins to offer us some imagery. Yesod is yearning. It's divine yearning. And so Yesod of Yesod is the yearning that animates the yearning. What I'd like us to take for our anchor today, for our practice, is the magnetism that makes up the earth plane. There is magnetism that is determining the shape of everything around you and everything in you. So as you're sitting in your body, you can maybe begin to notice you are tethered to your chair by gravity. There's a magnetism that is keeping you here. And it is the expression of an unfathomable divine perfection, that we are just this distance from the sun, and the sun is just the particular mass that it is, and Earth is just the particular mass that it is, that our cells can be suspended right here in consciousness. There's a magnetism that determines the shape and structure of every atom of your body. So as we begin to make our way into practice, I'm going to guide us in, and then I'm going to be quiet for a time. We always have the option of using the breath as our anchor. That's our fallback. But if you can today, I want to invite you to practice working with Yesod Sheba-Yesod, the magnetism that is at work in our lives. So now we're sitting up nice and tall. I invite you to soften the forehead, soften the eyelids and the cheeks. Let the tip of the tongue rest against the back of the front teeth. Check that your shoulder blades are resting down the back, and if you need to shrug them out or roll the neck, you're welcome. Feel the torso long and proud. Feel the sturdiness of the pelvic bowl and your sits bones pressing into your chair or cushion. Feel gravity at work on the body. And I want to invite you to call to mind some magnetism in your life. You know, we have the expression, drawn like a moth to a flame. As we begin to settle into practice, I invite you to call to mind some dynamic in your life where you have that felt sense being drawn like a moth to a flame. Perhaps it's a passionate love affair. Perhaps it's a sticky interpersonal dynamic. Perhaps it's a passion project. You are committed to making time each day to give yourself to it and let it shape you. See if you can't take as the object of your meditation that magnetism that makes up the earth plane. We want to see if we can feel ourselves in relation to something that draws us. The way that it makes us as we make it. This dance. Now this prompting is in the terrain of mind. So if you should notice the thoughts wandering, just returning the attention to the weightiness of the body. the feeling of the earth holding you here in your chair. And once you've regrounded, again, opening space and seeing if you can't continue to investigate that splendid dance, that push-pull phenomenon of Yesod Yesod. And if you float away, just coming back into the body, back into your grounding. In whatever dimension of yearning you're working with, seeing if you can't take it a little deeper, a little more granular. What is its texture? What is its temperature? What is its color? How does it move through you? Surely this Torah is not too baffling, nor is it beyond reach. It is not in the heavens. It is not beyond the sea. No, this thing is very near to you. It is in your mouth and in your heart. Yesod Shebeyesod gives us permission to entertain the possibility that our yearning is part of our path to Torah. This truth that is deep in us, this call, is the path we take to climb the mountain to revelation. So beginning to feel your way into what is this deep knowing that is in my mouth and my heart? How can I allow my yearning to be my guide? And as we move our way to the end of our sit, I invite you to just place your hands on your heart. Thank your body for any wisdom that it offered you today. And bless that yearning that you worked with today. Offering a sense of faith and gratitude and humility that whatever the whispers of your heart, that they are connected to that Torah that's buried deep within. And that honoring that in us is how we walk the path to revelation. Just taking a moment to honor your own wisdom, your own Torah. And with that, I'll invite you to take one last deep, long inhalation together. And as we exhale, we can just let the eyelids flutter open and turn the corners of the mouth up. It's a joy and a pleasure to practice with intention with so many beautiful souls all around the world. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Sarah. This is a beautiful practice. And may it stay with everyone rest of today and beyond. Friends, we seal the practice as we do every time, offering those of you who are in mourning or observing a yard site, or if it's your custom to join in the mourner's Kaddish, to do so. And if you're not reciting Kaddish, just to stay present. For those who are, offer your support, love, comfort as a minyan. At this time, you can put the name or names of those you're honoring today in the chat box now or after we recite Kaddish. And we thank Kat Esposito, who's holding our tech space today, as always, for sharing the words of the Kaddish on the screen. And if you're reciting them, I invite you to join me by rising in body or in spirit, and you can unmute at this time. Yit Gadal, Gadash, Shemei Rabba, Yaman, Bivrach, Vimute, Biamich, Malchusei, Chaye Chom, Vyome Chom, Aye B'Chom, Magala,
Amen.
Amen.
Yehesh me
Yeshmei
Rabba
Rabba
Barak
Barak
Olam Ulome Maya.
Amaya,
Barak
Barak,
v'yishtabach
Tabach,
v'yitzar
Yitzhar,
v'yitmam
Yitramam,
v'yitnaseh
Yitnaseh,
v'yitadar v'yitalel
Yitzhadar,
Torah.
Yitalel,
May the
Yital
Kedusha
Shema,
v'Gevurah
Avrihu,
Olam
Elam,
v'Yachta
Kol Birchata, V'Shirata,
V'Chutah
V'Nechemata,
Amarin
Ba'amiran,
Bama
Ba'amira,
V'Mru Amen.
Amen.
Shlama Shabbat V'Shneya
Maya,
V'Chaim Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Mru Amen.
Amen.
Eilish
Shalom,
Shalom B'Mamad
Shalom,
V'Yaseh Shalom B'Mamad
Shalom,
V'Al
Aleinu,
Kol Yisrael
V'Yal
V'Kol Yoshvei
Kol
Israel
Tevel,
V'Mru Amen.
V'Mru, Amen.
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 Thanks everyone for joining us today. And if you're leaving us now, we hope you'll join us tomorrow. We'll be led tomorrow in practice by Rabbi Joshua Bodiger, another wonderful teacher. And on Friday, we'll sit into Shabbat together with Rebecca Schisler of the IJS faculty, as we do on most Fridays, and very much look forward to that as well. Thanks to Kat for holding our tech space. Thanks to our teacher today, Rabbi Sara Brandis, whose bio and website, well, I'll put back in the chat in a sec, unless, Kat, you have it handy. I had it, but
I think you put it, I saw it in there somewhere.
I did. Well, that was at the beginning. Here we go. Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. All right. For those who are leaving us, we hope to see you tomorrow or sometime soon. And if you're staying on, you're welcome to use this time and space if you'd like, just to continue to sit with that beautiful guidance and instruction for this day of Yesod, Shabi Yesod, foundation and foundation, as Sarah taught it, yearning in service of yearning. And if not, you're welcome to stay on and just share reflections on your experience with today's practice or ask questions. And we'll invite Sarah, we'll invite you in here. And thanks so much for that. It made me, I really loved the idea of identifying Yesod with our, our embodied experience of yearning. It's not a word that, I don't think it's a word that actually we use that often, but of the many words that can be used to describe what we do here every day, one of them, I think, is the Hebrew term dveikut, cleaving, and your invitation to think about yearning and to experience it as magnetism made me, I had this both palpable sense of and visualization of two magnetic objects coming closer and they, there's that moment when they get so close that they can't help but interface in that way, which is a good way of thinking of dveikut, of this cleaving. It's being flush with this moment, with this experience, with aliveness in this moment. Many ways to describe dveikut, but it's basically communing with the divine. So here's my question about that. I was interesting because I was thinking about magnets, and at some point you said something about repelling, also attracting and repelling. I was thinking about, because this relates to intimacy. We're really talking about spiritual intimacy as well as interpersonal intimacy, right? That it can feel both, that it's very powerful to experience our innate sense of yearning, and it can be scary, right? For many of us, maybe most of us, maybe all of us. I remember once learning, I don't remember the Hasidic source, but I just remembering it was a Hasidic source about kind of tunneling through to get to God. And then once the whatever the material was being tunneled through got very, very thin, that there would be this impulse to like run away, So I guess my question after all that lead in is, do you relate to that? Do you have a sense about that there's this other side of the coin of yearning, of feeling pulled away maybe a little bit, or pulling ourselves away from that out of anxiety, fear, whatever it is, and how and if so, how to work with that?
Good. It's an awesome question. I'm going to answer it. And I also want to loop in the question that Lori asked, a parallel question in the chat. Also, sort of like the way she says this is, what about Diane? Like what, and right. Certainly we have in so many different faith traditions, a shunning of anything
Great
remotely question. Like sexuality or yearning. So, but Mark, I think that your image of the two magnets coming together, it's a perfect image to put side by side with the Nitzavim image, because when we go into the stories around the gathering of the people at Sinai, we actually find there God is basically asking your question, is wrestling with your question. There's this sense in the Torah that pure divine energy is so overwhelming that it's the natural tendency of the soul to act like a magnet and reconnect with source without will. And so God is worried when the people gather at the foot of the mountain, such that God first tells Moses, build a fence around the mountain to keep them safe. And then when Sinai gets close, God loops back and is like, wait a minute, no, but I don't like, God gets worried about it. And Moses has to remind him, no, don't worry. You had us build a fence. It'll be okay. And so your question is,
and also afterwards, the people say, hey,
it was too much.
It's too much.
That's right. That recoil.
Moses, yes. You go do it. Right.
Right.
And he tries to reassure them and say, no, you can do. Actually, it's interesting, like to connect it with, what you brought, the teaching about, Lo Vashamayim, it's in you, which is at the end of his life, is that there's a little like taste of that in that passage where Moses kind of tries to reassure them and say, no, you can do it. And they say, no, you get it. Right. We can't. So anyway, there's like this pushback there. That's really interesting.
Yes. So I think I'll share an answer in three lily pads, like three thoughts. The first is that certainly Dayenu, as a sense of, as in this, embrace each moment and receive each moment. So that is certainly a deep part of our practice. And if that, Leslie, is what you mean by Dayenu, then, sorry, Lori, what you mean by Dayenu, then yes, that we are called to be with what is.
Mm-hmm.
But Mark, your question about when are we drawn towards it and when are we repelled from it, that's really the nitty gritty of being a human being, because the reality is that if we try as people to just fully embrace each moment, look, we're in the week of Yesod. As I said at the beginning, Yesod in Kabbalistic terms is the divine phallus. This is sexual language. So if we are being instructed to make love to every moment, the reality in our daily lives is that sometimes that's easy. And sometimes every fear in the world arises as a barrier to our just embracing the moment. And so that's the deep practice. And in terms of what you're describing of the being pulled and the recoiling, I think that's the sacred human dance. The Sfat Emet has a beautiful teaching. His teaching is based on the dynamics of the divine chariot that Ezekiel sees, where when Ezekiel sees an image of the divine chariot, and that actually, this is super cool because the magnetism I was describing also is in the dynamics of every atom and the way that electrons circle atoms.
Right.
So to picture the structure of an atom and electron circling it, that's the very best metaphor I think we have for Ezekiel's vision. So what he sees in all of that energy, this is, modern Hebrew names what he sees electricity, right? Because we didn't have electricity back then, so this is where they took the word for electricity. So in that dynamic, Ezekiel describes what he sees as the divine beings are Ratzov V'Shov, is how he says it. So on that, the Sfat Emet teaches that to be Ratzov V'Shov basically means going back and forth, that they're going back and forth. They're as close to God as you can get. And even at that proximity where they're part of the divine chariot, they're still going back and forth. That same dynamic we get at Sinai of the people, the midrashes that the voice calls out and the people get thrown back 6 miles and have to hike back to the foot of the mountain. And then the next voice comes out, they get thrown back. So that's the nature of spiritual life, is back and forth, back and forth. But the inside of this Sfat Emet about that, he says, take comfort, because know that when you are the furthest that you ever fall away from God, know that you're at the point in your back and forth that you're about to draw close again. Wow. And in a time that you're going to draw close, know that, the falling away happens. That's part of the nature of the earth plane. I think that the power, though, of Yesod Shebeyesod, of the Kabbalists claiming this part of our human experience as holy, is what I was trying to offer us at the end of the meditation, which is that we are, there's all kinds of places in all kinds of religions, various thoughts that say things like suppress all kinds of things that arise in you, because the real path to God is not in that way. But in Judaism, we have a very different strain that says, no, there is that you are of God. And when you feel pulled towards life and life force, that is your neshama responding to its source. And that's something to be celebrated and embraced. And for me, that's what is the week of Yesod. And because right now, when you all count tonight, or when I log off and I count because it's time in Israel now, we're basically starting an 8-day stretch of Shekhinah, right? So we get to live for these 8 days, just finding God around every turn, in every little bit of matter where there's God, and there's God, and there's God, and there's God. And so for me, this yearning, it's the way in. Like that's how we end up finding God in every molecule, in every atom.
I love all of that. And when the imagery of the back and forth, the Ratzov V'Shov, I started thinking about, well, that's just like vibration. I'm thinking when you're thinking about Ezekiel, like there's this vibrational energy that wouldn't really be there if he just was Ratzo, it was just, or just Shov, and it was just adhering. That there's something about the back and forth motion. We've been thinking about like the bow going across the string of an instrument, that there's a Ratzov V'Shov, back and forth, there's that, it generates this kind of vibrancy. The other thing I want to throw in, if I might, about Lori's question, which was a great question about, well, how can you talk about yearning when we're supposed to like just be, be with what is, which was our theme during Hod last week. So that's where the Dayenu came from. It was a week of practicing Dayenu, like
Beautiful.
not like noticing yearning and letting that go. Is that I think the flow of these three Sefirot, these 3 weeks that we had Netzach, which is really this forward energy of doing, of enacting. That yearning is not exactly, maybe not exactly like, maybe it could we have done this in Netzach is what I meant 2 weeks ago, is what I'm asking. That you sowed this yearning that you're describing is really a little bit different than that Netzach energy, in that it's mediated by also our ability to be still and be with things as they are. And that yields a yearning that integrates that Dayenu awareness and consciousness into it, so that it isn't this desperate yearning. It isn't from a sense of lack. It isn't, there's an anchored sense of, I mean, if you think about it just in terms of interpersonal intimacy, right? Of like, I need to be with this person. Like I can't live without this person. That's yearning, but like, that's not, we wouldn't describe it as healthy or holy or wholesome yearning. It has to come from a sense of satiation and fullness with one's being and the desire to be with. So that maybe that's another way to think about integrating the Dayenu into yearning as part of it. And then, like you were like giving us a sneak peek ahead to this week of the next week, which starts for us, tonight, and then we want to move into this just presence, where all the qualities that we've been immersed with are brought to bear. So just gonna take a quick look at the chat, see if there are other questions.
Yes, thank you for the wonderful insights that folks have been offering. Very briefly, the book Magical World is a spiritual memoir. I wrote it some time ago now, honestly.
Maybe Sarah, you can say a little bit about Awakened Body also, for those who have not heard.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. One of the reasons that I will say something about Awakened Body by way of saying something in response to Mark, what you said. So, I think you're absolutely right that we don't get to the week of Yesod without living in a week of Hod and humility, humbling. I believe, though, that the week of Yesod, and this relates to my work at Awakened Body, the week of Yesod is it's what we need to make it to a week of Shekhinah, because the fact is that the earth plane is like our dimension here is like we live in the context of the binary. This is a world of light and dark. And we have to remember that for the Kabbalists, this was their practice. For the Kabbalists, before every mitzvah, they say, I am doing this sacred action for the sake of the reunification of God and the Shekhinah, which is to say the Kabbalists see the world as polarity that is constantly pulling together. That's the fact. It's sort of like what you were saying about Netzach. Netzach is God's stuff. We're very comfortable with a theology of the eternal, God as the eternal. But if we want to live a week of Malchut, of seeing God in every nook and cranny of this earth plane, then we have to get real and acknowledge that we live in a world of binaries, and yet God is embedded in the resolution of the binary. That's God here on the earth plane. It's the two that become one, that become two, that become one, that back and forth. And so that's why the magnetism. And that's what I do at Awakened Body. We bring the body into the work. I do a mode of spiritual direction that brings the body into the work. And so hands-on healing work and talk and touch as a way of helping to help people to know their purpose and live their purpose.
Yeah, beautiful. Sarah, thank you so much. It was a really special day today. And on behalf of everyone here, I just want to thank you and thank Kat, of course, for holding our space, and thank each of you for showing up as you do every day. And hope that this beautiful teaching and practice that helps us connect to our yearning and for the divine, for connection, for community, for holiness will stay with everyone. and wish you an Erev Tov there, Sarah. And
Thank
thanks
you.
for joining us. Always really special to connect with our teachers in Israel. So thanks for that. And thanks to all of you for being here. We hope to see you tomorrow to practice with Rabbi Joshua Bodiger. Be well, everyone.